Well, welcome back. This is Riley Davison, and you are listening to Bravo Zulu Radio. Thank you so much for being here, because tonight we have this fantastic program with a beautiful lady by the name of Cindy Simmonds, and she has one of the most awesome jobs that a person could possibly undertake. See, there are some people that they fix things. They fix air conditioners, they fix wood floors, they fix siding on a house, they do shingles on a roof, they fix cars. And then some people dedicate their lives to helping people fix themselves. And that's what you do, Cindy.
I do, yeah, and I love it. I love it.
That's awesome. So you have a story. What's your story? What is it? So how long have you been doing this as a counselor?
I have been practicing as a counselor since 2006.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And so what is it that made you realize this is what I want to dedicate my life to?
You know, it's interesting because my mom and dad, my mom always talked about a calling. She always had this calling.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally understood what that was as I was getting sober and I started understanding this calling. She had a calling that took her into the convent. My mom was in the convent. And what a beautiful job going in at 17 and giving up all your worldly possessions.
Uh-huh.
And I was having fun and partying and enjoying my life.
At 17.
At 17, of course, good kid, good family.
So there's a part here that we've obviously missed. So we've got a woman in the convent.
Yeah, Mom was in the convent.
Okay.
So then she always told me about this calling. Mm-hmm. So then when it all started coming down, and when I finally, my day that everything kind of all came down in Memorial Day in 2003.
Okay, so before we go there,
okay
you got to get me past the convent.
Okay, here we go. So she gets back. Okay, past that convent, I had the same calling.
Okay.
My calling was going to be turning my life around and going into counseling, to try and work. My goal was to work with those that I could identify with, that I knew that struggle, I knew the suffering, I knew the pain, and how God blessed me, the God of my understanding, how He blessed me to give me this opportunity.
All right.
And
okay, so I'm still trying to go back. Okay, so your mom's in the convent.
Yep.
Okay, so she didn't get married in the convent.
No, she got out of the convent.
Okay.
Thank you. She got out of the convent several years later, and then she met my dad.
There you go. Okay.
So she had met my dad.
Okay.
Who was striving to be a priest.
Okay.
Met my mom after she had left the convent.
Okay.
And then had all of us kids.
And he left
had
the
8. And he left the seminary. He
right.
promised God, hey, listen, I promise you my first son. And so Mom and Dad had 8 of us, and we have a large family. Grew up here in San Antonio, and lots of us kids. My mom and lost my sister. I had a sister that was a year older than me. Okay. She passed away shortly after birth, but then I came along, and I was the oldest living sibling, and Daddy worked hard and started his own firm here in San Antonio, and was very active in the community, and became a deacon here at one of the local St. Anthony de Padua Church here in Alamo Heights.
Right.
And we were really blessed. We had a happy time. Alcohol was something that we all shared and enjoyed, and I kind of carried that further with myself and into my college years, and went to Texas Tech University and took 6 years to get through school, and partied and drank a lot, and didn't have.
That's what the extra 2 years are for.
Yeah, I really was enjoying myself, and I didn't like the idea of I'm going to have to grow up, and I really enjoyed myself, and being away from home and having those experiences were part of my molding of self.
Sure.
Because I really lost my identity. I was very insecure growing up, and even today, my family remembers those times. I was one who was very insecure. I didn't want to show it too much. I would be bubbly and energetic and exuberant in nature and sports and playing and tennis, and but always never liked me. And I was loved and told that I was loved, but I always had a tough time with that. And one of the biggest things that I had a tough time with personally was one of the reasons why cocaine became something of interest later on was I never liked what I saw in the mirror. I saw somebody who was fat. I always saw myself as somebody who was not smart.
You're obviously a very brilliant lady.
I'd like to think that I'm pretty intelligent,
Right.
but I did growing up. I tried and strived. I always thought my siblings were a lot smarter than me, and
don't we always
go
get
on my
ourselves
toes.
in trouble when we compare ourselves to other people?
Yes. And finding that individuality for me. I mean, I could do whatever I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Having that confidence and very easily intimidated. For sure, by the time I got on tennis courts and played tennis and in any of the sports that I played, and a lot of the girls that I grew up with, I still stay in touch with and played softball with, and went to state. But I always hated that picture of the team because I always thought I looked like the one that stood out as not beautiful, and that's just where I was. That's just how I saw myself. Even though I could have been loved and told different, it stayed with me. And college, and I really found a lot of freedom and tried to find myself in the niche of all the plethora of people that were there and all the people that I met and the friends that I made. Drinking was something that was also part of that, and having a good time and taking my time.
Well, nowadays, the kids have access to all kinds of drugs, and at a very, very early age. And but back in the day, I mean, alcohol was it. I mean, it was king, right?
Right. Alcohol was probably the king. I mean, at least it was. For me, I did not partake in any other drugs. But alcohol, even that was just something that was the common thing that everybody used on campus, as far as I knew, and any other drugs that you hear about and what I hear today, that from even the young ones that come in and can't finish their school, they have to wait and they want to get well first. It's changed.
It's so
the
important.
dynamics changed so much, and it's scary. Fighting so hard to try to reach that goal and then have to cut short or get well and hopefully aspire to complete what that goal was.
So everything comes to a head on Memorial Day. Tell me about Memorial Day.
Memorial Day, boy, at this point, after college, cocaine came into my life. And on Memorial Day in 2003, I had myself in a pretty big pickle. I had been smoking. My cocaine use had gone from snorting cocaine to smoking crack cocaine. Crack became... I sold my soul. It's almost as if I sold myself to the devil, the way I looked at it. Because the devil, that drug, the cocaine, the crack, gave me everything that I wanted. That made me skinny. It made me do better at my job. I excelled. I never lost my job. Excelled. And what was so sad about it all is on that day is that my intervention was not an intervention necessarily where it involved like a family intervention or an interventionist that we use today to help people find their way to treatment, to help families draw that line. My line was drawn by the federal government, by the feds, and getting myself into trouble by financial fraud. And I was doing very bad things. I was with somebody who was very special to me, and I was too sick to recognize the relationship that I had in my life at that time with somebody who was retired Army Special Forces, and we were very close. I loved him very much, but I loved the drug more. Mm-hmm. I always have to take that back. Yeah, if I loved him, I would have made a change, but I didn't. I lost that point. You lose that point. I didn't care. I didn't care if I lived. I didn't care if I died. And so on that day in 2003, what happened was he didn't come home, so I knew something was wrong. And so I got into the car and I drove up to Fort Sam. And so I drove up and I saw that his car was outside of the bank. And so then I knew that everything that I knew was going to happen 6 months prior, I had started an illegal, I was making choices that were not healthy. And I was writing checks that were not right for me to do, but in my mindset, I wanted to get high, and I didn't care who I hurt, and I knew that it was going to be painful and I was going to get caught eventually. So I tried really hard to try to wrap my head about what to do next, and so I knew things were coming down, and so they had kept copies, and I was writing checks to support a drug habit that I had almost up to $900 a day. I was smoking crack all day long, and I had lost my job finally then in 2003. And you get to a point, you tell so many lies when you're sick. You tell so many lies, you believe the lies. And families, they know, the first person who's affected, I always say when I'm teaching and when I'm working, is that the first person affected is the one who's in the bedroom. And it goes from bedroom out, because that's the person who sees the behavioral changes. That's the person who endures the greatest pain. And I know that James endured great pain from my choices. And it's like the monkey where you don't see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Well, it all came down that day. And
what was that like? What happened? Did you walk into the bank? Did you drive away?
No, I drove away and found. Then soon after that, James had hooked up with my father, and so from that moment on, I called up, and it was right across the street, not far from the station here, where my dad's office was, and right off of Tacoma. And I called up there, and I said, "Dad," he said, "Cindy, what have you done? What have you done?" And so I went into his office. He says, come in. So I went into the office, and I walked up those stairs, and I walked into his office, and James was there.
You know.
I know it's all happening. And there was this big book with all these checks that I had written to support this cocaine habit. And I just wanted to die. In that moment, I just wanted to die. And I wanted to run and get out of that office so badly. And I had my brothers in the office. They didn't know what was going on, but I ran out of that office. I said I had to go to the restroom because tears were overwhelming me. And I felt so alone and so naked and alone and visible, where I would have been numb. And so I ran, and I went to my childhood home. I wanted to get upstairs to a bedroom. I wasn't going to make a mortal sin. My thought was, this won't be a mortal sin. I won't go to hell because I'm going to just use this drug, and I'm going to blow up my heart. And if I blow up my heart, then it's an accident, and God forgive me. But I wanted to die. But my neighbor caught me running in and saw hysterically how bad I was. And so I ended up in a hospital, and from there, the journey began, in which now the reality then sinks in. I was in a mental health hospital here in town to get stable, because you crash, and in that crash, you get confused. You wake up and you don't understand your reality of what's happening, and then once you start sobering up, then you understand what that is, and then shame, and then misery and hopelessness and fear, immense fear, and then anger itself. That you project anger out to everybody else. And then treatment begins. So you had to get to that point before, as you said, the journey begins. Yeah, the journey begins.
Right. And so you just mentioned one of the things that in preparation that I knew we were going to get to, and you started to touch a little bit on it in the first half, the 5 stages of grief. Mm-hmm. And so you just in essence just mentioned them. There's the denial, the anger, the bargaining,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then you get to the depression, right? And then there's the acceptance, and then that's the point from which you can move forward.
Right. And that's the tough part, because when you accept it, you hit on it perfectly, because when you're thinking about that, this is it. I had to look at it like grief and loss. Like, I'm saying goodbye. This is gone. This is done. I have surrendered and accepted that I can never use, this drug ever again. And so with that, there is the 5 stages of grief. I had to go through those stages, and that took some time, because we want to bargain and justify so much as to the reasons why that we still need it, or we want to just maybe. Just in case, so
I only want to do it one more time. Right.
And so relapses follow. The greatest relapses happen in the first 90 days. Right. Typically, you can look up to 85% in the first 90 days. It's so critical, right, because it requires such a mindset change and then that acceptance and surrender.
You have to want it.
You have to want it.
It's more than it's more than wanting.
Yeah.
It has to be that all-consuming. This is all or nothing.
And you have to find that. And if you want it, you also then have to bring in that dynamic of, like I said earlier, I sold my soul to this devil, to this disease. So now I want God in my life. And the very thing that I hated and I thought that I was being punished or that I was bad and going to hell was not true. That was the years of the cocaine. That's me thinking this stinking thinking.
Oh, I was just going to say the same exact thing.
Stinking thinking. Yeah. And so then you have to find that balance. How do I find this God in my life again? That's this higher power of my own understanding. For me, it eventually came through the fellowship itself. I had no power. I felt like I didn't. I needed to get the education, and I needed to get counseling. I had to go do the very things that I get to do now every day in treating others. I experienced. And so
that makes that greater connection between you and that person that you're trying to help, right?
Absolutely.
They know that you're being sincere with what you're talking about.
Yeah, you have that empathy, but you have that understanding, and there is that connection of it helped me consider this is what brought me into my calling, into my ministry. That's what I call it.
Right.
Because it means so much, because I've been there. And nobody could have saved me. I had to find that myself. I can't save anybody. Right. We as a team.
As much as you know and as much as you, all of the resources that you can bring to bear, you can't save a single person.
But
you can help them reach that point.
We can help them get to that water, like the story goes, and drink it if they want. And if they still have to continue to drink the water and pass the cup, and that goes and that overflows into families, because it's not just the addict. It's not just me. It affected my family. They worried. They lost sleep. They got depressed. They had shame and guilt. I mean, it affects everybody. And I think one of the saddest things is that, or not saddest things, some of the confusing thoughts is it's this: the addict goes away to get treatment, and then everything's going to be fine when you come home. But everybody's affected. Everybody has to learn how.
That's when it begins.
The recovery starts and has to happen with everyone. And at the Last Resort Recovery Center, we also have a family program. So we are helping and coaching and helping the families once a month learn how they help themselves, while also building a healing dynamic with the sick loved one we get to treat every day.
So when you talk about higher power, is this a 12-step program?
It is. It's a 12-step program. Okay. It's spiritual in nature. There is no defined, ordained religion. That's one's own path. But throughout those 12 steps, gosh, as God mentioned throughout all those steps, but it starts with powerlessness and accepting that your life's unmanageable, and then just finding out that there is a solution. But
and there is no solution until you face the problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've written down. That's exactly.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah. And when you see them falling down, we may have family. I consider them my family because they have the same disease I have. I consider my family in treatment as my family there here, and all of their families as my family visiting, because they visit. They get to visit on Zoom because of COVID. They get to visit through family program and learn how to help themselves and communicate then weekly with their loved one that's with us. But it's family to me, and sometimes they fall down multiple times, and we get to treat them over again, and then they find success, and sometimes they don't. And that was what was so heartbreaking with the loss that I had over the recent time. Mm-hmm.
And you said 85% in the first 90 days, 85% relapse.
Yeah, it's a high percentage. It's very high. It's real important that they have structure, that they have a support system, that they are in. We have developed a network of connections with sober living and therapists and ongoing outpatient treatment. It just doesn't start with stop with residential treatment. It goes beyond, or it's not just outpatient. Sometimes they need residential. Because
that person has to have somebody that they can reach at any time of the day or night, whatever it is, so they can. That
sponsor is important. The sponsor is important, and that was something that was really hard for me to really embrace. Just like so many, why am I going to tell my story to somebody who doesn't know me? But yes, there's a lot of familiarity in the disease that we share, but life experiences may be different. But there's always the same consequences in many ways.
Right. Well, if you were to grab 100 people and tell them your story, how many of them, percentage-wise, would be able to relate it's a very high number.
It is high, yeah. Most of them all do.
Yeah.
You know, back on, you know, when everything came down with me with the legal, I was facing to go to jail for the rest of my life. But even that didn't deter me. I mean, it put me in a position where if I was going to go to jail for the rest of my life, why would I want to try to turn my life over? And that is when I really made a commitment. That's when that calling came in, and that's when I said, okay, Lord, I'm willing, please help me, let this pass, help me get through this. And I promised a life to turn that around and to help others because of everything that I took from myself and from my family and my friends and my career and the people I worked with. And James, yeah, he was very important.
So I think that's one of the things that make people reticent to seek help, is that they think, wait a minute, I'll be throwing it all away. For me to step up and say, I've got a problem, time out, then wait a minute, all of a sudden you're not going to be trusted at your job, you're not going to be trusted in your relationship, and they're worried about losing when in fact, you know, by what they've already done, they've put all that on the chopping block in the first place.
Yeah. We don't want to believe that anybody can see that we're losing that ability to live responsibly daily. We think that we're on top of it.
Isn't
we
it
really
incredible
do.
how
And
the
yet
number of people that float through life like that and actually get away with it for a long time?
A long time. Because it's a long time to get sick. It doesn't take long though when you finally hit that point where when it goes down fast.
It does, right.
And
Right. It's that house of cards. You're building that house, like you were talking about being a liar.
Yeah.
Is that it's a constant thing, and it only takes one. It's like, wait a minute, what happened? Yeah, and it all comes down.
I think one of the greatest things, though, in looking at where I'm at now, is that everything that I've been through, everything that happened, you know, I have no regrets. I think that everything that I've experienced and the humility that I have, like I feel like I'm just a regular person. I'm just somebody who's in recovery and helping others. Like there's so many of
But not a
things.
no one. You started out saying, but I'm nobody, Riley.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
Yeah, I said
and
I'm
you
nobody.
just showed me for almost an hour now
Yeah.
that that's not the case.
I love what I do, but there's so many people who are just as important and do great things. Like, thank you. I told you, I was flattered and I'm humbled because everything that happened to me has made me become a better person today. Even the people I work with at
Right.
TLR, I'm blessed.
Well, like I told you, I realized when we lost my mom, and she had been a registered nurse all my life,
Yeah.
and I realized that when we lost her, that there were a lot of people like her and like you that are dedicating themselves to the community, and they need their story told. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you know, in this station, KLUP 9:30 a.m. The Answer, and the one of the gentlemen that left already, but then the other people that are here, they fostered me along, and they gave me that opportunity, and then now I have the opportunity to give back to the community and to
Right.
people like you, and to recognize you for the service that you're doing. And so, how do people get in touch with you? How do
Sure.
Bastrop's such a beautiful place.
Yeah, Bastrop's gorgeous,
Yeah.
and we're just outside of Bastrop in Smithville,
Okay.
Texas,
Okay.
about 17 miles away.
Right.
And if they want to call the Last Resort Recovery Center, they can do that 512-360-3600. We'll be more than happy
Say it one more
to
time.
reach out. 512-360-3600, the Last Resort Recovery Center.
Okay.
Give us a call. We're here to help.
Wow. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much, Cindy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm blessed.
Thank
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
All right.